Hello friends, Adam here with FED. Yesterday I made a tier list based on the hardest games in the series, based on their hardest difficulty. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be taking a look at every game and ranking them based on how hard your first playthrough is, or your blind playthrough of the game is going to be. Now, there are going to be some subjective things in here, like any tier list, because it's a tier list and it's opinions. But in particular, there's going to be some games where I'm going to choose a difficulty that you might play the first time. I know for me particularly, I tend to not play the easiest difficulty of Fire Emblem games on my first playthrough anymore. I tend to play either I tend to play the second hardest one usually. So for instance, in Path of Radiance, I'd choose normal mode, or in Radiant Dawn, I would choose normal mode. Shadow Dragon, I'd probably play like hard. I actually probably play like hard 1 on a first playthrough. So I think that's where I'm going to be going with it. But there are plenty of times when that's not an option, and you just have to play a set difficulty. And there are some that I might even say, yeah, probably should play this on normal for your first time, and I'll probably rank it on that. But we'll see where we go from there. All right, so let's start in chronological order. And we're going to be hardest blind on top, easiest blind on bottom, and then we'll have everything in between. And so I got some criticism on the app, like why we called the middle one average yesterday, because people said that it had like didn't have as many selections in it as other ones. But when I mean average, I mean like literally the average. Like there was almost an equal amount over average as there were under average. Therefore, average is like the middle. You know what I mean? So average doesn't mean it's gonna have the most, but average means it's like the middle ground of the series. So let us get started with the first game, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. So I was tempted to put this in easy because honestly it's not the hardest entry, but I will say it's an NES game, it's really archaic, so I'm gonna throw it into average just because it's not really friendly to a first playthrough. There's a lot of things that are missing, especially if you've played more recent games, that are, I would say, almost crucial to the enjoyment of more modern games, just like the battle predictions windows and seeing your movement, seeing enemy movement, stuff like that. But overall, it's not that hard. You'd get used to it, I feel like. But on a blind playthrough, I'm going to say it's average. All right, next, Gaiden. For the same reasons as FE1, Gaiden is going to go into average. Not because it's particularly difficult. I mean, there's endless grinding, and you get some strong units, it's whatever. But it is very just archaic and old. You're missing a lot of the things that make modern Fire Emblem easy and fun to play. So I'm just going to put it there for now. Okay, next we have Mystery of the Emblem, which I think is like the actual baseline, the actual average. As far as difficulty goes, it adds a lot of like the modern things that we like to see, like enemy range, like being able to click on an enemy and see how far they can move, battle windows to know how much damage you're going to do, and all that, like battle prediction window things, what is that called? I just call it a battle window. I don't know what it's called though. And stuff like that, things that make the game much more enjoyable to play. And I was tempted to put it into hard because there are some like secret events that are not secret events, but there are some, like, if you miss out on certain items and whatever else, then you miss out on like the best ending, and in certain characters you miss out on the best ending. So I was tempted to put it into hard for your first blind playthrough, but I think average is still pretty good for this when considering the rest of the series. Next we have Genealogy of the Holy War, and I am going to throw this into hard. Mainly because of the mid-game twist, which I will not spoil for those of you who have not played the game. It just kind of changes everything, and if you aren't prepared for the second half of the game by everything you do in the first half of the game, it can make the second half of the game a lot harder. I understand that even if you aren't prepared, I'm sorry, I'm trying to like speak without spoiling it. I understand that if you don't prepare at all, like there's zero preparation, and you have relatively weak characters for the second half of the game, then it's still doable. Of course, people do it all the time. But I think it would, I don't know, not knowing about it in the game, not explaining it super well to you, is what makes that hard to me. So that's what I'm going to say. I understand that you still get really strong characters throughout the game no matter what, regardless of what preparation you make. But I think as far as a blind playthrough, that's fair to put it here. Alright, next we have Thracia 776, and for now, I might change it later, but for now we're going to put it in the hardest game to play blind in the series. Now, once you know what's going on in Thracia 776, you know all the little mechanics, you know what to prepare for and what to look out for. Much like any strategy game, it gets a lot easier. But, man, if you have no idea what you're getting into, there's plenty of surprises waiting for you. Like the twist after Chapter 3, there are plenty of pretty terrifying weapons from enemies like berserk staffs and sleep staffs and stuff like that. If you're not prepared for those, you might be in trouble. There's super scary like late game enemies that if you either aren't ready to warp skip, it's going to just be really scary and hard to deal with. It's super hard. I'm just going to say that. It's not easy to play blind. I would suggest doing it if you can. I mean, a lot of us, it's hard to play a game blind because either you see a YouTube video about it, you see someone else play it, you see something, article on Reddit or whatever. But, I don't know. I think any of these games can be played blind, even the hardest. But yeah, I think Thracia 776 is the hardest blind playthrough. Alright, Binding Blade. I'm going to put this in hard. I'm going to put it above Genealogy. The Binding Blade locks specific weapons behind specific requirements to get to certain chapters that have those weapons. And if you don't get all of those weapons and you don't break them, like you can't break them, they have to still be usable. If you don't do that, then you miss out on an entire significant portion of the game. And that to me is just a really unfriendly blind thing to do. Now, I don't think Binding Blade is that hard overall. Like you can beat that normal main story without getting the extra story, and it's not that bad. But it's frustrating that there's these requirements to get to these chapters that you just aren't really told. The indications are either not there or barely there in the text and whatever else, or maybe I'm just remembering wrong. But for a blind playthrough, I think Binding Blade is pretty brutal in that sense. It does encourage multiple playthroughs, I guess. I think that's what they were going for, but it really just feels like a cheapened experience that way. But yeah, I think just because it locks endgame content behind and knowing what you're doing already, it's pretty unfriendly as a blind playthrough, personally. Alright, next we have Blazing Sword. I think Blazing Sword is the easiest blind playthrough in the game. And that's because I'm assuming if you're playing blind, you have to play Lin normal mode. Because it's your first time through the game forces you to play that your first time. It's basically, Lin normal mode is 10 chapters of tutorial essentially, so it's just really easy. And then from there you move into Ellawood normal mode, which is not the hardest difficulty in the world. We'll just say that. It's honestly really easy. So you have 10 chapters of your hand being held, and then the rest of the game of just really weak enemies. Like the enemy strength in Binding Blade is super low. You have tremendously powerful units in Marcus, Kent, and Sane, especially with Lin mode bonuses there, getting leveled up. And you just get to win the game. You even get Pent and Hawkeye later on that just can totally carry you as well. It's the easiest blind playthrough. It is super beginner friendly. If you were looking for another Fire Emblem game to play after playing 3 Houses or something, but you're worried about getting to the older games because you think they're going to be hard for a first blind playthrough or something, this game is the perfect place to start because it is so easy on your first playthrough. All right, just behind Blazing Sword, I think is Sacred Stones. Sacred Stones is a little less handholdy, but I think overall the difficulty is easier. Sacred Stones just gives you again enemy quality is really low. They're all pretty weak, and then every unit you get can be a powerhouse with and there's endless grinding and all that, so that's cool. But just you start off with the best unit in the game, but then also you get Franz can be amazing. Freaking Vanessa, even characters like Ardor and Lute will be fine. Pretty much everyone's gonna be good. right? Even if you're not prepared for like late game stuff with like warp or whatever else, you're still going to be just super good. So I think Sacred Stones, I was tempted to put it into the easiest blind, but because of Lin mode more than anything, I think I think Fire Emblem Blazing Sword is the easiest blind, not this. Okay, Path of Radiance. I think Path of Radiance is going to be like a little harder than Sacred Stones on your first blind playthrough, but not much, honestly. And for Path of Radiance, I'll assume you're playing on like normal mode instead of easy. It is a pretty relaxed experience. Bonus experience allows you to level up whoever you want, which is really fun, honestly. And you can even cheese those level ups by like saves coming. You can like force units to get like perfect level ups if you really want to, which is kind of fun, but also kind of like weird. But you can use any unit in the game. Like my first playthrough, my favorite unit was Rolf. Probably still is my favorite unit in Path of Radiance just because I think he's cool. Rolf is dope. Yeah, Path of Radiance is like I don't know. One of my favorite beginner games to suggest, honestly, is Path of Radiance. Easy blind playthrough, but it's not like it's not gonna bore you, except for those long animations. They might bore you. It's still fun though. All right, Radiant Dawn. Radiant Dawn hard mode. Not hard mode. I'll probably do normal mode. Regardless, I'm gonna put it up in hard. That's what I was meaning to say. I think for a first blind playthrough, Radiant Dawn really has issues informing the player of certain things down the line that are going to be rather jarring. And those things are particularly, I'm talking about Part 3. Again, I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't played it yet, but in Part 3, there are a couple of rough chapters that you may or may not be prepared for, like, at all. And there's no way for the game to really tell you to be prepared for these, I guess, without it just, like, being straight up fourth wall breaking. But it's pretty brutal, I will say. Part 3, Chapter 6 is what I'm talking about in particular, and then 313 is also hard. Just you're not going to be prepared for these most likely, and the game doesn't really help you prepare for them. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think Radiant Dawn's pretty tough on a first blind playthrough. But luckily there is battle saving, so that's a whole thing too, because you're not going to be playing on the hardest difficulty that disables battle saving. So that's a thing. I think I'm going to leave it in hard for now, but maybe I'll move it. Alright, Shadow Dragon. Shadow Dragon, I'm going to throw into... See, I was going to throw into easy, but now I'm thinking more like average. Assuming you're going to play like on hard 1. Because I feel like hard 1 is a little more balanced towards like what they probably wanted the game to be. So that's what we're going to say. We're going to say... We're going to say Shadow Dragon, you're playing it on hard 1. If you play it on normal, then you get the prologue, which really eases you into the game. You can sack Gordon and get a really good unit in Frey, if you want. So I think that's fair to put it there for hard 1, but if you're playing easy, I think... If you're playing on normal, I think it goes into easy, almost as easy as Binding Blade. But it does give you the option to not do that, so we're going to assume hard 2, I think. Okay, New Mystery. New Mystery, I think it's going to go into hard. New Mystery is probably the game I have the least experience with in the series, so it's hard for me to really say, but there's just a lot going on in New Mystery that is pretty tough, like especially endgame stuff that there's chapters that are like there's one chapter in particular that Goto shows up. I can't remember what it is. But he's basically just like, hey, don't take your time here. Like, get this done, because it's like, they're scary enemies, you know? And if you're not prepared to, like, get going, get on your horse and go, then you might struggle a little bit, you know? So I think overall, hard is fine for that. Again, I'm assuming you'll probably play, like, hard 1, maybe normal. Normal's fine on New Mystery, too, because I think it's pretty hard. But yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Alright, Awakening. I think Awakening goes right in between those for now. Awakening, even if you play hard mode, is honestly pretty easy. Awakening doesn't get really hard until you play like Lunatic. On hard, you can pair up from the beginning. You can, so you can have like just busted like pair ups right from turn 1. You can have, you know, start your Crom Robin solo if you want, or just throw you can just throw Frederick at everything because he's super good. There's like so many things that this game makes it like really easy to play blind. There's the recruitments are all fairly, if not extremely basic. There's not really any secret events, and the support system is really intuitive, so you get to the spoiler units pretty easy. And yeah, I think it's easy. Endless grinding, all sorts of stuff. So we're gonna say Awakening is pretty easy. All right. I think tied with Awakening, I'm gonna say it's a little hard. I think Birthright is like slightly harder than Awakening, but still pretty similar. You get amazing units in Ryoma and of course Korin, and then even like Hanoka and Takumi are awesome. Kaze is a great unit. You just get a lot of strong, powerful units and endless grinding, and honestly enemies that are pretty weak, and there's even fairly low enemy density in some cases too on lower difficulties. I think Birthright's just like from Fates is the easiest path. I think Revelation might be slightly harder. Yeah, we'll say that. Okay, Conquest. I think Conquest is the next like hard playthrough. I'm not sure where to put it, but we'll just put it here for now. There's a lot of enemies that are going to debuff you, and there's just some things that you might not understand right away, like the debuffing mechanics, why weaponry, like there's like steel weapons slow your attack speed down by 3 without really showing you on your stat screen. Just little things that make the game more, and that's present in Birthright too, but I think it's just more prevalent in Conquest because it is a slightly harder game. So I think Conquest really is the hardest of the 3 paths, and it is a harder blind playthrough. They kind of advertised it in the beginning as being the path that you pick as like a Fire Emblem veteran or something, and I think it kind of holds true to that. So it's a rougher blind playthrough, but it's not too bad, honestly. Like, again, none of these are too bad as far as blind playthroughs go. You can do them. All right, Revelation. I'm gonna put it like, I don't know, like just above Birthright. I mean, it's not that hard. And the thing is, if you're playing Revelation, you probably already played Conquest or Birthright, so you're probably fine. I'm not gonna say much about it because Revelation is a pain. All right, Shadows of Valentia. It takes everything from Gaiden that was like kind of hard to understand and makes it easy to understand. And there's like no problems at all. I think it's a really great starter game, honestly. It's really fun. There is endless grinding and all that stuff. And yeah, just easy, breezy game. Really fun story, honestly. I love that game, personally. All right, 3 Houses. I'm going to throw into average. I think 3 Houses is a fairly average play experience as far as your first blind playthrough. I think 3 Houses does a great job of explaining to the player how you play the game. And I think it does a good job of challenging you, even if you know how to play the game. The game is fairly open too, as far as classes, and by fairly I mean extremely open as far as classes you can pick, characters you can use, and all this different stuff. So it's really open to experimentation, and that might be a little daunting on your first playthrough. But overall, I don't think it's like super hard, but it's not quite easy to me because there is a lot to learn, take in, and understand. So I'm going to say it's an average for your first blind playthrough. And finally, because I like it, we're going to throw Tearing Saga in here. So I'm going to ask me, why not Visteria, why not Berwick? I haven't played all the way through Visteria yet, and I don't know if I will because I've stopped having fun. Berwick is different enough to, and I haven't finished Berwick yet, I'm still playing it, but also Berwick is just like different enough from Fire Emblem that I don't feel like it really fits in these categories or tier list. And honestly, I think Berwick is a pretty hard blind playthrough so far. I'm doing a blind right now, it's pretty rough. There's a lot of stuff going on. But Tearing Saga is basically Fire Emblem and everything but name. And I'm going to put it in the bottom of hard for as far as your first blind playthrough goes. And that's not because the game itself is hard, but that's just because there's a lot of arbitrary things that you'll miss unless you either look it up or have already done it or heard someone else do it. Like getting your dancer unit is like a happenstance almost. You actually have to like be a bad person to get a dancer in this game. So it's kind of it's pretty sad. The joke is anything to save turns, right? But it's pretty messed up. And there's just a lot of other little events that you'll probably miss, but there's so many that you'll find some. It's hard. There's characters that you won't be able to recruit if you play it wrong. Like, in my first playthrough, I missed Mince. Even though apparently he's really good, but I just, like, I guess I played the game too fast or something. You have to wait a certain amount of turns, but there's no way to really know how many turns you have to wait or something. It's a whole thing. It's a pain. But I think it is relatively easy, but there's just a lot of things you may not know, and that the game doesn't openly tell you, which I think makes for a harder experience overall. But yeah, that's my tier list for blind playthroughs. I think I'm happy with it. This is just my opinion, my experiences, and we might have all had different experiences and not the same opinion, which is fine, but that's why we have the comment section, so you can tell me your opinion. I'd love to know what your opinion is, so tell me why I'm wrong, please. And if you're new, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video for visibility and all that stuff. Gotta play that YouTube game, you know, gotta get them likes. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys.